There's a deep rift in the Western alliance over the war in Ukraine. It's a matter of time, it seems, before the US and Europe are to leave. We already know that Britain has stopped Ukraine aid due to financial reasons. Britain has a new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. He used to be the Minister of Finance of Britain under Boris Johnson. He has come out yesterday saying that they can no longer support Ukraine financially because of the British economic situation. Of course, he has to have his allegiance to his own country first. Now, this deep rift in the Western alliance over Ukraine, domestic policy problems in Europe, and the US threaten their foreign policy goals. A deep rift can be seen between the Western allies in Ukraine, which means that support in Ukraine is not so unshakable. In particular, October 26, the White House stated that the chances of peace in Ukraine through diplomatic channels are fading, so it appears that the US intends to support Kiev's efforts until a military victory is achieved. Now, Putin of Russia and Putin's politicians that come out a few days ago saying Ukraine is no longer a sovereign nation, it is a colony of the United States, because they take aid from the United States, they take orders from the Pentagon. The Ukrainian army, the military forces, take orders 100% from the Pentagon. So it seems that the Ukraine is already a US colony as far as Russia is concerned. That's how Russia views Ukraine. So it appears the US intends to support Kiev's efforts until a military victory is achieved, but this is not a simple matter for the following reasons. The coming European winter, as well as the US midterm elections in November, have weakened the international coalition in favor of Ukraine. US President Joe Biden prioritized maintaining a global coalition against Russia as a top priority of his presidency, yet he is already facing difficulties in the global diplomatic arena. It's noted that Washington wants Russia-India revolution, which is not going to happen. Developing countries in South America, South Asia, and Africa have been hit by the global food crisis and rising fuel prices, and rightly blame it on Western sanctions. The main allies and partners of the United States are the Western European countries of NATO. However, there are cracks in this transatlantic alliance, largely due to the internal problems. A new research poll, a Centro poll conducted last month, shows that the percentage of U.S. citizens worried about Ukraine's defeat fell from 55% in May to 38% in September. The public has other concerns, with many Americans believing that Washington is too supportive of Ukraine. Among U.S. lawmakers, too, cross-party support for Ukraine affair is also drying up. Things get worse. The Zelensky-Biden relations have deteriorated as the former continues to demand more and more weapons, for Biden continuing to ask Congress for more and more money, while Ukraine President Zelensky sounds ungrateful, quote-unquote, is becoming a big challenge, according to Politico. On October 25th, amid intense political backlash within their party, a group of about 30 liberal Democrats in the House withdrew a letter they had published the day before, calling on the U.S. president to hold direct diplomatic talks with Russia on a ceasefire. In any case, although they backed down, the congressman's move was a sign of weariness after 8 months of war largely funded by the American taxpayer. On the Republican side, California Governor Kevin McCarthy has aligned himself with voices such as President Donald Trump and Fox News host Tucker Carlson in opposition to current Washington policies. And on the other side of the Atlantic, across the Atlantic, nations such as France, Germany, and Italy have shown signs that their leaders doubt the possibility of victory against Russia. In fact, one could say that Europe has been quietly abandoning Ukraine since at least August, when for the first time there were no new military commitments to support the country from the 6 largest European Union nations. In late September, it was reported that both European NATO and the US have no weapons to send to their eastern ally. Now, we know Germany doesn't have anything to send. Germany says it sent everything to Ukraine, and it only has 2 days of ammunition left. And they said, if anything happens to us, how are we supposed to support ourselves with 2 days of ammunition? So you can understand that everything has gone to Ukraine. So Ukraine, many say, has a black hole abyss, and nobody can account for where all this ammunition and military assets are gone to. Now, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg even held a special meeting to discuss ways to replenish arms stocks of alliance members, urging them to reinvest in their industrial bases. According to German foreign policy analyst Ulrich Speck, the West provides Ukraine with enough weapons to survive, not enough to regain territory. In other words, the basic idea is, quote, that Russia should not win but also not lose, end quote. So how long such a protracted conflict might last is not clear. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz met in Paris to talk out their differences over the European Union cap on gas prices backed by France, which Berlin opposes. Energy prices and the economy are the main topic in Europe and also in the UK today. Nobody has enough money to pay for electric and heating. It's just not possible. You don't have enough income to pay for all this electricity, all this energy, let alone money to eat. So while the EU struggles with its own economic and energy crisis and conflict-induced inflation, with all its social consequences, the bloc support for Ukraine appears increasingly dependent on the Americans. The encirclement of Russia was always first aimed at the U.S. anyway, not to mention its energy interests, and U.S. strategy is largely responsible for the current crisis itself. In any case, faced with domestic problems, Republicans in Washington do not want to offer any more help to Ukraine and may end up controlling Congress after November's midterm elections. Also, Trump's return to power is not an unrealistic scenario, and if the U.S. were to reduce, suspend, or cut off its military and intelligence support, European states would hardly be able to compensate. The truth is that since World War II, the continent has been largely dependent on the United States of America for its security. In fact, Hungarian journalist Edzer Zalin, who specializes in European politics, writes that it's hard to say whether European support for the cause can survive the winter, as both depression and risk of social unrest haunt the continent. Well, we know that there's already protests against their people against their countries because they can't afford to live. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán summed it up this way: energy sanctions were imposed by Brussels on member states, and since then energy prices have skyrocketed. When this happened, Brussels promised to end the war and hurt the aggressor more than the EU member states. Instead, today all of European citizens pay a punitive energy burden. Some experts, including Nicholas Balbon of the Global Public Policy Institute, Ian Bond of the Center for European Reform, Ulrich Frank of the European Council on Foreign Relations, and former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine John Herbst, have expressed concerns about the sustainability of European support to Ukraine. Washington's own support is waning. According to John O'Brien, professor of European integration at Maynooth University, support of Ukraine, whether economic or military, is mostly led by the United States. Eric Edelman, former U.S. Undersecretary of Defense, in turn, notes that while public support remains quite strong in his view, one should never underestimate the challenges of maintaining the coalition and alliance management. In sum, serious domestic problems in both the U.S. and major European countries have the potential to hamper the foreign policy goals of this transatlantic alliance as the harsh realities of winter, recession risks, and elections come knocking at the door. This is from Banking News Greece, and I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.